I didn't think getting sick would change everything. I thought it would be like every other hard thing I'd handled in my life. Uncomfortable, inconvenient, but manageable. Something I'd push through quietly and deal with on my own, the way I always had. Because that's who I'd been for as long as I could remember. The strong one, the reliable one, the woman people called when something went wrong. I'd spent decades being the person everyone leaned on. When my kids were young, I was the one who stayed up all night with fevers, who rearranged work schedules, who figured things out without complaining. When my husband struggled, I carried more. When my parents aged, I showed up. When friends needed help, moving, babysitting, venting, praying, I was there. I didn't keep score. I didn't expect anything back. At least that's what I told myself. The truth is, I believed deep down that when it was finally my turn to need help, people would show up, not because I demanded it, not because I reminded them, but because love had memory. I was wrong. My name is Carol. I'm 64 years old. I live in a quiet suburb that looks nice from the outside. Trimmed lawns, decent neighbors, nothing dramatic. The kind of place where people wave and say, "Let me know if you need anything," and usually mean it, in theory. The day everything shifted wasn't dramatic either. It was a Tuesday morning. I remember that because Tuesdays were my grocery day. I'd gotten up, made coffee, and felt this strange heaviness in my chest. Not pain exactly, more like pressure, like someone had stacked a weight there and forgotten to remove it. I stood at the kitchen counter waiting for it to pass. It didn't. Instead, my hands started shaking, my vision blurred just enough to make me sit down. I remember thinking, okay, this isn't nothing. Still, my first instinct wasn't fear, it was logistics. Who do I call? That question caught me off guard, because suddenly the list I assumed existed didn't. I picked up my phone and stared at it longer than I'd like to admit. My daughter's name came up first. She worked long hours, always busy, always stressed. I pictured her sighing, checking the time, saying she couldn't leave work. My son lived 30 minutes away, 2 kids of his own, always juggling something. Friends? Most of them were my age, dealing with their own aches, their own parents, their own lives. I realized something unsettling right there on that kitchen chair. I had spent my life making sure no one ever had to worry about me, and now no one knew when they should. I ended up calling 911 myself, not because I thought I was dying, but because I didn't want to burden anyone. That thought should have scared me more than it did. The hospital visit turned out to be a wake-up call, but not the kind you see in movies. No dramatic diagnosis, no instant resolution. Severe exhaustion, the doctor said. Stress, dehydration. Your body's telling you it's had enough. He looked at me kindly, like he'd said this to women like me 100 times before. You need rest, he added, and support. I nodded, because nodding was what I did. What I didn't say was that I didn't know what support looked like for me anymore. When I got home later that afternoon, the house felt louder than usual. Every creak, every hum of the fridge, every reminder that I was alone. I texted my kids then, not to ask for help, just to let them know what had happened. Went to the ER today. I'm okay, just exhausted. Don't worry. I meant it. I always meant it. My daughter replied hours later. Glad you're fine. I'm slammed today, but check in tomorrow. Tomorrow came and went. My son sent a thumbs up emoji. That was it. No visit, no call, no do you need anything, no can I come by. I told myself not to read into it. Everyone's busy. Everyone has their own lives. That's what I'd been telling myself for years. But something had cracked open in me because for the first time I wasn't strong, and suddenly the world didn't quite know what to do with me. The next few days were harder than the hospital visit, not physically, emotionally. I was tired in a way sleep didn't touch. I moved slower, needed breaks, found myself sitting down halfway through chores I used to do on autopilot. And every time my phone buzzed, my chest tightened, not with hope, with dread, because I knew deep down that if it rang, it would be because someone needed something from me, not because they were checking on me. Sure enough, by Thursday, my daughter called. "Hey, Mom, quick question. Can you watch the kids Saturday? We're desperate." I held the phone in my hand, stunned. She hadn't asked how I was, hadn't mentioned the ER, hadn't even acknowledged that I might still be recovering. "I don't think I can," I said slowly. "I'm still not feeling great." There was a pause. "Oh," she said. "Well, okay, I'll figure something out." Her tone wasn't angry. It was inconvenienced. After we hung up, I sat there staring at the wall, feeling something I wasn't used to feeling toward my own child. Invisible. The realization crept in quietly, like a truth that had been waiting for permission. I had trained everyone to see me as unbreakable, and now that I wasn't, they didn't know how to show up, or maybe they didn't want to. That night, lying in bed with my body aching and my thoughts racing, I finally admitted something to myself. Being the strong one had come with a cost, and now that I couldn't pay it anymore, I was about to find out who actually cared and who only cared as long as I was useful. The thing no one tells you about getting sick later in life is how quiet it is. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the kind that echoes, the kind that gives your thoughts too much room to wander. I spent the first week after the hospital visit moving through my house like a guest. Every task took longer than it used to. Folding laundry meant sitting down halfway through. Making dinner meant choosing whatever required the least standing. And every time I slowed down, guilt followed. I'd been raised to believe rest was something you earned after finishing everything else. And when everything else never ends, rest starts to feel like laziness. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent years telling other people to take care of themselves, friends, coworkers, even my kids, while quietly believing that advice didn't apply to me. Now my body was forcing the issue. The messages from my family didn't stop. They just changed shape. My daughter texted about schedules. My son asked if I still had his spare set of keys. A neighbor dropped by to borrow a ladder. No one asked if I needed groceries. No one asked if I was sleeping. No one asked how scared I'd been sitting alone in an ER bed. I told myself not to be dramatic. They don't know how bad it was, I thought. I didn't tell them. But another voice, newer, sharper, answered back. They didn't ask. By the second week, I noticed something else. I was still expected to show up. Emotionally, mentally, as if my body breaking down didn't change my role at all. My daughter called one evening upset about a fight with her husband. She talked for 40 minutes straight, voice tight, emotions spilling over each other. I listened, because listening was second nature, because interrupting felt rude, because old habits die hard. When she finally paused, I cleared my throat. "I'm having a rough day," I said. "I'm still pretty wiped out." There was silence. "Oh," she said. "Yeah, that makes sense." Then she launched right back into her story. I sat there holding the phone away from my ear, staring at my reflection in the dark window. I looked smaller somehow, older, tired in my bones. That was the moment something in me hardened, not into anger, but into clarity. I realized that my illness hadn't changed how people treated me. It had just exposed how they already did. I wasn't seen as a person who might need care. I was seen as a resource, a sounding board, a backup plan. And when I couldn't perform that role at full strength anymore, the world didn't pause. It just adjusted around me. I tried, gently at first, to speak up. When my son called asking if I could drive across town to pick up something he'd forgotten at my house, I said, "I'm not up for driving today." He sighed audibly. "Okay, well, can you just put it on the porch and I'll grab it later?" Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Do you need anything?" Just logistics. After we hung up, I cried. Not loudly, quietly. The kind of cry where tears just fall and you don't bother wiping them away. I kept thinking about all the times I'd rearranged my life for these same people. All the days I'd driven sick, all the nights I'd shown up exhausted, all the times I'd swallowed my own needs because someone else's felt more urgent. I wasn't angry at them. I was angry at myself. Because I'd taught them this was normal. I'd taught them I didn't need care. By the third week, my energy was better, but my patience was gone. That's when my daughter finally came by. She knocked like she was visiting a neighbor, not her mother. Quick, polite. "I just wanted to check on you," she said, stepping inside and glancing around. I noticed she didn't take her coat off. "I'm okay," I said, still tired. She nodded, already pulling out her phone. "Well, I can't stay long. I just wanted to make sure you weren't, dead," I asked, not unkindly. She laughed nervously. "No, just not worse." We stood there awkwardly. She didn't sit, didn't ask if I needed food, didn't notice the stack of unopened mail or the laundry piled on the couch. After 5 minutes, she hugged me quickly and said, "Call if you need anything." I watched her leave, the door closing softly behind her. And that was when the truth settled in fully. They loved me, but they loved the version of me that didn't require effort, the version that held everyone else together while quietly falling apart. That night, I lay awake thinking about how many women I knew like me. Caretakers, fixers, the ones who show up no matter what, the ones who get praised for their strength and forgotten in their weakness. I wondered how many of us had believed the same lie, that loyalty would be returned, that love would remember, that if we gave enough, someone would eventually say, "It's your turn now." My body had given me a warning shot, not just about health, about truth. And I knew deep down that if I didn't change something now, this would only get worse. Because aging doesn't make you stronger, it makes you more honest. And I was running out of room to pretend everything was fine. By the time the third week rolled around, I stopped pretending I was almost better. That phrase had become my shield, something I said to keep people comfortable, something I said so no one would feel obligated to slow down for me. But the truth was, I wasn't bouncing back the way I expected. I woke up tired, not sleepy, spent. The kind of tired that sits in your muscles and your thoughts, that makes even small decisions feel heavy. Some mornings I'd stand in the kitchen holding my coffee, trying to remember what I'd planned to do next, only to realize my mind had gone blank. That scared me more than the chest tightness ever did. I started canceling things, lunch plans, church volunteering, errands that could wait. Every cancellation came with a knot of guilt, even when no one complained, especially then, because silence can be louder than anger. One afternoon, my daughter called again. I could hear the rush in her voice before she even spoke. "Mom, I need a favor." Of course. "My sitter canceled last minute. I know you're tired, but could you just come over for a couple hours? The kids mostly entertain themselves." Mostly. I sat there gripping the phone, staring at the calendar on my wall, empty for the first time in years. "I really can't today," I said carefully. "I'm still not feeling steady." She sighed. Not loudly, just enough for me to hear it. Okay, well, I guess I'll take the day off work. The way she said that, like it was a consequence, made something snap inside me. I didn't ask you to do that, I said. I know, she replied. I'm just saying. That was it. I felt it then, that familiar pressure behind my eyes, but this time I didn't push it down. I was in the ER alone, I said quietly. There was a pause. What? She asked. I was scared, I continued, and I didn't call you because I didn't want to be a burden. Another pause, longer this time. Well, she said finally, you should have said something. That sentence landed hard, because I had, just not loudly enough. I've spent my whole life making sure no one had to worry about me, and now I'm realizing that means no one does. She didn't respond right away. When she did, her voice was defensive. That's not fair. We care. I know you do, but caring and showing up aren't the same thing. She bristled. So what do you want from us? She asked. The question stunned me. I didn't have an answer ready because I'd never allowed myself to want anything before. I don't know yet, I admitted, but I know I can't keep being the strong one right now. The call ended awkwardly. Not angry, just unsettled. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of a lawnmower outside. I felt exposed, like I said something I couldn't take back. And for once, I didn't regret it. That evening, I realized something painful. My family wasn't cruel. They were conditioned. Conditioned to rely on me, conditioned to expect my availability, conditioned to believe my strength was endless. And the moment that belief cracked, everyone felt off balance, including me. The next day, my son stopped by unannounced. I was in sweatpants, hair unwashed, sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of soup I'd barely touched. He looked surprised to see me like that. You don't look great. I almost laughed. No kidding. He hovered awkwardly, then sat down across from me. I heard you went to the ER. Why didn't you call me? I met his eyes. Because I didn't want to inconvenience you. That's ridiculous, he quickly said. Is it? I asked. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I just figured, he said slowly, you'd tell me if it was serious. The body has a way of humbling you when you ignore it long enough. I thought I could manage on my own if I just moved slower, rested more, pushed less. I told myself I didn't need help, that I'd already asked enough by simply being sick. That illusion didn't last. It happened one evening as the sun was going down. I'd spent the day feeling off, lightheaded, unsteady, but I kept telling myself it would pass. I was heating up leftovers when a wave of dizziness hit so hard I had to grab the counter. The room tilted. Not dramatically, not enough to panic, just enough to scare me. I sat down on the kitchen floor, back against the cabinet, heart racing. My phone was on the table, just out of reach, and suddenly that old fear returned. Who do I call? Not who could I call, who would actually come? I sat there longer than I should have, waiting for the feeling to pass. When it didn't, I crawled the few steps to the chair and pulled myself up, shaking. I hated how small I felt. Not weak, exposed. I picked up my phone and stared at it again, my thumb hovering over names I'd spent years dialing without hesitation. This time, I didn't call my kids. Not out of spite, out of clarity. I knew what would happen. They'd worry from a distance. They'd tell me to go to the ER. They'd promise to check in later. But they wouldn't come. I ended up calling Linda. Linda wasn't family. She wasn't someone I'd poured my life into. She was a woman I'd met years ago through a community group, someone I'd chatted with, helped occasionally, but never leaned on. She answered on the first ring. "Carol," she said, "you okay?" "I'm not," I admitted. "I'm dizzy and I don't feel steady. Can you come over?" "I'm on my way," she said without hesitation. No questions, no sigh, no delay. She was there in 15 minutes. She didn't lecture me, didn't minimize, didn't tell me I should have called someone else. She sat with me, made tea, helped me breathe through the dizziness, and stayed until my hands stopped shaking. "You scared me," she said gently. I laughed weakly. I scared myself. She looked around my kitchen, the half-eaten soup, the dishes in the sink, the unopened mail. "You shouldn't be alone right now," she said. I nodded. "I didn't think I was," I replied. That sentence broke something open, because I'd felt alone for weeks, but this was different. This was undeniable. After Linda left, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the evening in my mind. I hadn't called my children, and they hadn't called me. I wondered how long I could have been sitting on that kitchen floor before anyone noticed. The answer came too easily, probably until I reached out. That realization settled heavy in my chest. The next morning, my daughter finally called. "I heard you weren't feeling great last night," she said. "Linda told you?" I asked. "Yeah," she replied. "She ran into you at the store." There was a pause. "Why didn't you call me?" she asked. I sighed. "I didn't want to bother you." "That's ridiculous," she said again, a little sharper this time. I closed my eyes. "You say that," I replied, "but when I don't need something, you're busy, and when I do, you assume I'll tell you. I'm tired of having to manage my own emergencies." She didn't respond right away. "I didn't know it was that bad," she said finally. "That's because you never asked," I said quietly. The truth hung between us, uncomfortable, necessary. She promised to check in more, to stop by soon. I didn't thank her, not because I was angry, but because I'd learned something important. Concern that arrives only after someone else steps in isn't support. It's reaction, and reaction comes too late. Over the next few days, I sat with that truth. I thought about all the times I'd shown up without being asked, all the moments I'd anticipated needs before anyone spoke them out loud. And I realized something that stung. I'd mistaken loyalty for habit. I assumed that because I was always there, others would naturally do the same. But loyalty isn't automatic. It's intentional. And intent shows up when it's inconvenient. Linda showed up, not because she owed me, not because she was trained to, because she chose to. That changed how I saw everything. I stopped chasing reassurance from my kids, stopped hoping they'd suddenly understand. Instead, I paid attention to actions. Who checked in? Who followed through? Who vanished when I stopped being useful? It was painful, but it was clarifying. Because sickness doesn't just weaken the body, it strips away illusions. And the biggest illusion I'd been living under was this, that love and loyalty were the same thing. They're not. And learning that at my age hurt more than any diagnosis ever could. After Linda came over, I stopped lying to myself. That might sound dramatic, but it wasn't. It was quiet, almost mundane. I stopped saying I'm fine when I wasn't, stopped cushioning the truth so other people wouldn't feel uncomfortable. And that's when things got harder, because asking for help, real help, doesn't bring people closer the way we're taught to believe. Sometimes it pushes them away. A few days after that episode in the kitchen, I decided to do something I'd never done before. I asked directly. My son called one afternoon, checking in briefly like he was crossing something off a list. "Just wanted to see how you're doing," he said. I took a breath. "I could use some help," I said. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Like, what kind of help?" he asked. "Just a ride to my follow-up appointment. I don't feel comfortable driving yet." Another pause, longer this time. Well, I've got a lot going on this week. Can you do Uber or something? There it was, the answer I'd been bracing for. I could, I said slowly, but I was hoping, yeah, this week's just crazy. Crazy. I knew that word well. I'd used it myself for years as a reason not to show up for myself. Okay, I said, I'll figure it out. After we hung up, I didn't cry. I just sat there staring at the phone, feeling something cold settle in. Because now it was undeniable. When I needed help that required effort, I wasn't the first call. I wasn't even the second. I was a problem to solve, not a person to support. I didn't mention it to anyone, not my daughter, not Linda, not even myself, really. I just absorbed it. Old habits die hard. But something else was happening beneath the surface. I was paying attention. A few days later, my daughter called. "Mom, can I help you with something?" she asked immediately. I almost laughed. "Maybe," I said. "What's going on?" She explained. Schedules, stress, juggling too much. "I just need you to come over for a bit. It would really help." I thought about the appointment I'd Ubered to, the kitchen floor, the dizziness, the silence. "I can't," I replied. She sounded surprised. "Why not?" "Because I'm still recovering," I said, "and I need to rest." There was a sharpness in her voice now. "So you're just not helping anymore?" The way she said it, like a character flaw, made my chest tighten. "I'm helping when I can," I said carefully. "I'm not sacrificing my health." She exhaled loudly. "This is really hard for me." I almost said, "I know." Instead, I said something else. "It's hard for me, too." She didn't respond. The call ended awkwardly. Afterwards, I felt sick, not physically, emotionally, because for the first time, I wasn't sure if my children saw me as their mother or their safety net, and those are not the same thing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying old moments, times I'd dropped everything, driven across town, shown up exhausted because someone else needed me. Moments I once felt proud of. Now they felt different. Not wrong, just unbalanced. I realized I'd built my identity around being indispensable, and now that I wasn't, I didn't know who I was supposed to be. The next morning, Linda called. "I'm making soup," she said. "I'll drop some over." I started to protest. Then I stopped myself. "Thank you," I said. "That would really help." She brought the soup, sat with me, and listened, not to a problem, to me. I told her about the calls, the pauses, the excuses. She didn't look surprised. "You're not asking for too much," she said. "You're just asking the wrong people." That stung, but it also rang true, because somewhere along the way, I'd confused obligation with loyalty. I assumed blood meant automatic support. I assumed history guaranteed presence. But illness has a way of stripping things down to what's real. And what was real was this. The people who showed up did. By the time I stopped waiting for my children to change, something inside me finally relaxed. Not in a relieved way, in a resigned one. There's a difference. Hope keeps you tense, always watching, always expecting the next call to mean something different this time. Letting go of that hope feels like setting down a weight you didn't realize you were still carrying. I stopped imagining future versions of my kids who would suddenly show up with casseroles and concern. Stopped rehearsing conversations in my head where they'd finally say, "I didn't realize how much you needed us." That fantasy was exhausting. Reality, as it turned out, was quieter. My days became smaller, slower, and strangely more honest. I started planning my weeks around what I could manage instead of what others might need. Doctor appointments, rest days, short walks when I had the energy. I kept my phone on silent more often. At first, that felt wrong, almost reckless. But nothing terrible happened. The world didn't collapse. People adjusted. Or they didn't, and either way, I learned something important. I didn't have to manage their discomfort anymore. The conversation with my daughter finally came on a Sunday afternoon. She showed up without calling ahead, something she used to do all the time. This time, I didn't jump up to greet her. I stayed seated. She noticed. "You okay?" she asked, standing awkwardly near the door. "I'm tired," I said, "but come in." She sat across from me, eyes scanning the room like she was looking for clues, maybe guilt, maybe illness, maybe proof she should feel something more than obligation. "You've been distant," she said. I almost smiled. "I've been recovering," I replied. "There's a difference." She crossed her arms. "It feels like you're pulling away." I met her eyes. "I am," I said. "A little." That startled her. "Why?" she asked. I didn't soften it this time. "Because I can't keep being the strong one when I'm not, and because every time I need help, I'm reminded that I'm on my own." She frowned. "That's not fair." "I know," I said, "but it's real." She sighed, frustrated. "You never told us you needed this much help." I nodded. "That's true," I said. "I spent my whole life making sure you didn't have to worry about me. I thought that was love." She was quiet then. "I just assumed you'd tell me," she said. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the tiredness settle into my bones. "And I assumed you'd notice." That landed, not like an accusation, like a truth. We sat there for a long moment, neither of us speaking. Finally, she said, "I don't know how to be what you need." I believed her. "I'm not asking you to be anything you're not. I'm just not pretending anymore." She left shortly after that. No argument, no resolution, just space. That night I cried, but not the way I used to. There was no panic in it, no fear of abandonment, just grief. Grief for the relationship I thought I'd built. Grief for the version of motherhood that promised care would come around eventually. Grief for myself. The next day, my son texted, "You okay?" I stared at the message for a long time before replying. I wrote, "Some days are better than others." He didn't ask more, and I didn't fill in the silence. That was new, too. I stopped chasing, stopped explaining, stopped oversharing to make other people comfortable. Instead, I invested my energy where it actually returned. Linda came by twice a week, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to sit and talk, no agenda. A neighbor offered to drive me to appointments without making it feel like a favor. A woman from church dropped off a note, handwritten, asking how I was doing and meaning it. These weren't people I'd poured decades into. They were people who showed up. And slowly, painfully, I accepted that truth. Blood ties don't guarantee loyalty. History doesn't guarantee care. Being needed doesn't guarantee love. What guarantees support is choice. Someone choosing to show up, even when it's inconvenient, especially then. As my health slowly stabilized, so did my clarity. I stopped seeing myself as abandoned. I saw myself as awakened. Awakened to how much of my life I'd spent giving from an empty place. awaken to how little room I'd left for myself, awaken to the truth that strength, when expected, becomes invisible. One evening, sitting alone in my living room, I had a realization that stopped me cold. I had confused love with loyalty. Love is feeling, loyalty is action, and the two don't always arrive together. You can love someone deeply and still not show up for them when it matters. That doesn't make them evil, but it does make the truth unavoidable. And the truth, once seen, changes you. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I was awake. And once you're awake, you don't go back to sleep just because the dream was comfortable.
Something shifts when you stop fighting reality. Not because it gets easier, but because you stop exhausting yourself trying to make things different than they are. That realization came to me one quiet morning when I noticed I hadn't checked my phone in hours. No anxiety, no waiting, no scanning for missed calls, just stillness. I was sitting by the window, sunlight stretching across the floor, thinking about how unfamiliar peace can feel when you've spent your life in motion. For years, I believed love was proven by endurance. If I could tolerate more, forgive faster, give longer, then I was doing it right. But sickness strips that illusion bare. When your body slows you down, you find out who can meet you there and who only loved you when you were useful. That truth used to crush me. Now, it clarified things. I stopped expecting my children to suddenly become different people. That was the real turning point. Expectation had been my quiet torment. Every unanswered call, every delayed visit, every "sorry, I'm busy," I'd taken it personally, as rejection. But once I stopped hoping they'd show up the way I had, something softened. I no longer measured their love by what I needed from them. I measured it by what they were capable of giving. And that boundary changed everything. One afternoon, my daughter stopped by unexpectedly. She didn't stay long. She didn't bring solutions, but she sat beside me on the couch, awkward and unsure, like someone learning a new role. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. I nodded. I didn't either, I just did it anyway. She looked at me then. Really looked. "You look calmer," she said. "I am," I replied. That surprised her. It surprised me too, because calm doesn't come from being cared for. It comes from no longer begging to be. I stopped narrating my pain in hopes someone would respond, stopped explaining my boundaries, stopped justifying my rest. And something strange happened. The world adjusted. Not perfectly, not warmly, but enough. I found myself enjoying things I'd abandoned years ago. Morning walks without destination, books I'd never finished, music playing just for me. None of it dramatic, all of it healing. There were still moments of sadness, still times I wanted more, but wanting doesn't mean needing, and that distinction saved me. One night, lying in bed, I thought about how many women like me are praised for strength, but never protected because of it. How often "you're so strong" really means "we don't have to worry about you." I'd worn that compliment like armor. Now I saw it for what it was: distance. And I no longer wanted it. I didn't need to be admired. I needed to be respected. First, by myself. The illness had taken a lot from me. Energy, certainty, illusions. But it had given me something far more valuable: clarity. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't waiting. I wasn't proving my worth through sacrifice. I was living, quietly, honestly, fully. And for the first time in a long while, that was enough. There's a point in every long season of pain where anger runs out, not because things were resolved, but because carrying it becomes heavier than the hurt itself. That's where I found myself. Not forgiving, not forgetting, just finished with resentment. I didn't wake up one morning feeling noble about it. There was no big emotional release, no conversation that tied everything together. It happened quietly. One day, I realized I wasn't replaying old conversations anymore. I wasn't imagining future apologies that might never come. The story had stopped looping. That's when I understood something important. Closure isn't something other people give you. It's something you stop waiting for. I still loved my children. That never changed. But the love no longer came with expectations attached. I wasn't waiting for them to prove anything. I wasn't keeping score. I wasn't measuring effort. I accepted them as they were, not as I needed them to be. That acceptance didn't make the relationship perfect. It made it real. One evening, my daughter stopped by unexpectedly. She didn't stay long. She didn't bring solutions, but she sat beside me on the couch, awkward and unsure, like someone learning a new role. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. I nodded. I didn't either. I just did it anyway. She looked at me then. Really looked. "You look calmer," she said. "I am," I replied. That surprised her. It surprised me too, because calm doesn't come from being cared for. It comes from no longer begging to be. I stopped narrating my pain in hopes someone would respond, stopped explaining my boundaries, stopped justifying my rest. And something strange happened. The world adjusted. Not perfectly, not warmly, but enough. I found myself enjoying things I'd abandoned years ago. Morning walks without destination, books I'd never finished, music playing just for me. None of it dramatic, all of it healing. There were still moments of sadness, still times I wanted more, but wanting doesn't mean needing, and that distinction saved me. One night, lying in bed, I thought about how many women like me are praised for strength, but never protected because of it. How often "you're so strong" really means "we don't have to worry about you." I'd worn that compliment like armor. Now I saw it for what it was: distance. And I no longer wanted it. I didn't need to be admired. I needed to be respected. First, by myself. The illness had taken a lot from me. Energy, certainty, illusions. But it had given me something far more valuable: clarity. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't waiting. I wasn't proving my worth through sacrifice. I was living, quietly, honestly, fully. And for the first time in a long while, that was enough. There's a point in every long season of pain where anger runs out, not because things were resolved, but because carrying it becomes heavier than the hurt itself. That's where I found myself. Not forgiving, not forgetting, just finished with resentment. I didn't wake up one morning feeling noble about it. There was no big emotional release, no conversation that tied everything together. It happened quietly. One day, I realized I wasn't replaying old conversations anymore. I wasn't imagining future apologies that might never come. The story had stopped looping. That's when I understood something important. Closure isn't something other people give you, it's something you stop waiting for. I still loved my children. That never changed. But the love no longer came with expectations attached. I wasn't waiting for them to prove anything. I wasn't keeping score. I wasn't measuring effort. I accepted them as they were, not as I needed them to be.